Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Gonna move old Douglas the Whale out the way real quick and pull out the book. Alright, we are back with the final chapter of the notes. I hope you're all doing well today. I do believe we are on the final chapter, right? Summary of a previous chapter. Jungkook's headed down a dark road thinking everybody's against him. Jin found the cabinet in the old music room and opened the book, and the words started spiraling around him. Just kind of like he's trying to unlock his memories, because I think he's in a bad mood because he's stuck in the time loop and he's forgetting himself in the time loop. And his friends are starting to see that things are going awry, and they want to help him out a little bit. We have a side story which is kind of wrapped up in the story. They haven't come together yet, but we think that Jin's dad, who is trying to destroy this container living area to make a redevelopment center, also will destroy the orphanage that J-Hope loves so much. RM lives in the container area. Right, and it's all set to happen on September 30th. They found this paper that was part of the plans for the redevelopment, which got out to the media. They didn't mean for it to, but it did. Somewhere in there, these stories are going to align, and I think it's going to be in this chapter. Now, this happens to be the longest chapter. I will do my best to get it done in an hour, but if not, I will make a 2-part video for this. And then we have the ending, which I think is the epilogue, right? Right, the epilogue, which is very, very short. If you're not too busy and you're following me this far, let's go ahead and wrap this up tonight, see what we can get through and learn. This chapter is called The Reason Why Fireworks Are Beautiful. Getting closer to September 30th. The first entry in this chapter is Seokjin, August 3rd, year 22. Right, this is all happening in the same year, so I'm just going to skip the year part and I'm just going to name the day, okay? Unless we see something else. I came back home. The pictures were still strewn on the floor. I picked them up one by one. Yoongi and Jungkook sitting on a stool and playing the piano. Namjoon sitting by the window, and Hoseok and Jimin dancing and horsing around. I still had the throbbing headache, but I knew. The pain was evidence that what I was looking at and trying to remember were important to me. I spread open the map of my dad's soul. If it was indeed the map of his soul, then what would the map of my soul be? My errors and mistakes, the choices I'd made and I had not made, and the things that changed because of them. The map of my soul would have all that in it. Suddenly, the people in the pictures seemed to be moving. I thought I heard Hoseok and Jimin laughing, and Jungkook turning to look at me, and I heard Yoongi playing the piano, Namjoon and Taehyung running at the beach laughing. All those moments in the pictures were lifted up in the air and were replaying like in a video. The music was playing, they burst into laughter, and the sun was pouring down. The moments overlapped with each other, the pictures were merged, and something unknown unraveled from my heart and spilled out. It rode in my veins and fanned out to every corner of my body. Something was clogging up my head, crumbling down, and memories poured out like fireworks. Once released, the memories whirled around, bewildered and baffling. The whole room shone bright with the whirling memories that were sad, wistful, heartbreaking, and joyous. I couldn't believe it as I stared at them. How could I have forgotten them? And I realized something was exuding light from my pocket. I took it out. It was a Polaroid picture. A picture with clear, crumpled lines. I thought I could hear Jungkook's voice. "Let's take a picture here." I turned and saw the beach. All my friends were running to my car. Each got to a place and took a pose. Click. Pressed the shutter. No, that was not it. We had taken a picture there countless times, but I pressed the camera shutter only during the last time loop. This was the first loop ever for the 6 of them to be in the picture without me. Before then, I had used the timer, and we had all been in the picture. Next, the moments that were whirling around the room disappeared, and the scene in the Polaroid picture unfolded in front of my eyes. The sea breeze was blowing, it was hot, and my neck was sticky with sweat. The sand in my shoes felt prickly. "Seokjin, hurry up," Namjoon mentioned to me. "Hurry, run," said Taehyung. I set the timer and ran to them. My feet sank deep into the sand. Just as I was able to turn, I heard the camera shutter click. Someone laughed. There was no reason to be laughing, but we still laughed. Pointing to one another and not knowing what was so funny, we roared and rolled all on the sand. We laughed ourselves silly. When I came out of it, I was still in the room. The memories I saw had disappeared. I was alone with the pictures scattered about in the room. I looked down at the Polaroid picture in my hand. The scene in the picture was slowly changing. There was me standing next to my friends in front of the car by the beach. I suddenly remembered what the cat had said. There will be a price to pay. This was the price. Having the happiest memories disappear from me and forgetting the precious people around me. I realized what kind of horrible contract I had signed up for. The wind was blowing from the window. I looked around me. I had no idea how much time had passed. The sun was up, not a cloud in the sky. It was morning, a new day. The wind coming from the window circulated in the room, which had started to get hot. The fresh new air hovered around me. Do you think you can straighten out the errors and mistakes and save all of you? I was finally able to answer the question. And now I knew why I was back in the time loop again, when I had thought I was done with it. The question itself was wrong. I didn't have to save us. I didn't have to straighten out all the errors and mistakes either. What I had to do was to accept all my errors and mistakes as part of myself. The one and only person I couldn't save was me, and I had to forgive, accept, and love myself. That was the only answer. The wind slowed down and then dissipated. I realized all the pain had come to an end. What? I don't even stared us in the face, right? But for a little bitty shudder, like the click of a shutter to be the one butterfly effect, that's nuts, bro. So, Jin's back in the loop. He knows what's going on, right? He's here to stay for this one. And we figured out what the cat said, what the price to pay was, right? He had to lose himself to find himself. Alright. Namjoon puts on the 7th of August. I walked out of the gas station. It was deep in the night, but the heat of the day seemed to have made the road its permanent home. I glanced at the downtown area where Taehyung and I had roamed around. What had happened several days ago seemed ages ago. After coming back from the classroom that day, I had to adjust back to my daily routine in no time. Making a living was still the most important thing. Besides my job at the gas station, I had found another temp job. When I dragged this dead, tired body of mine home, I ended up crashing into the bed. When I got to the container village, a sense of something eerie in the night air blew against my face. I gave darting glances into the dusk. A notice was posted on the containers. In accordance with the development plan of the city of Songju, this area will be cleared out starting September 30th. Are they really going to clear out the area? I had received the notice a couple times, and a person from City Hall had made a visit. He said the residents here, including me, had no rights whatsoever. He was right. We had just come here and made these abandoned containers our homes, so of course we had no right of possession. Are they really going to do what they say they'll do? A man who lived at one of the last containers shoved the notice in my face and asked, I don't know, but seeing how things are now, I don't think they're bluffing. He glanced at the notice from top to bottom and ripped it into pieces. How can they do this when they know people live here? I'll see if they will carry this out, if they do it. The document disclosing the police's non-interference agreement, even in the case of violence, was made public, and the news and media poured out criticism against going ahead with the plan. There were protests against Kim Chong-jun and the mayor of Songju. Some residents in the village thought things were not so hopeless, but I wondered if the media would really protect us. There were people who would benefit from the redevelopment for sure, and they had their justifications. The world did not side with powerless have-nots whose only means of fighting was to kick and scream. Other people would sympathize with us once or twice, but not for long. The law and the system were never on our side. I squatted in front of the container. It was only a month and a half left before they kicked us out. I had no choice but to stay in the back room of the gas station. There were people here who had no place to go. People who had no other means but to scream at the top of their voices or to face violence with nothing but their bodies. People who had no best alternative, not even a worst alternative, and I thought of Wu Chang. I took out my phone. I opened a text message from Seokjin from a couple of days ago. Namjoon, I'm sorry and thank you. We'll talk later. I'll call you. Next entry is by Jin. It's on the August 7th, so it's on the same day. After I got my memories back, I felt wretched. The fact that I had lost my memories wasn't the whole problem. I couldn't stand what I had done during the last loop. I attended the redevelopment plan meeting several times. I knew everything about it, what they were planning to do, and what problems they were expecting. Among my dad's documents, I even saw the current resident statuses with a red circle around Namjoon's name. I was an accomplice and willing participant in the plan to drive Namjoon to his death. This accomplice felt foreign as if it were not me. Like a hollow shell that mimicked me, it was vicious and vile. selfish and stone-hearted, without any human warmth. I wanted to claim that he was not me. Nothing was done out of my will, and the blame should go to the hollow shell. But he had my face on him, and my body. The one who committed all the mistakes was none other than myself. I picked up my dad's diary. If I remember correctly, he did not like seeing me hanging around with my friends. He called my friends useless, and held them in contempt because they didn't come from power or privilege. I suddenly had a question. How could my dad do that? The way he thought of my friends was just like him. But according to his diary, from the classroom turned storage, he had had friends. Friends who were so important to him that he tried to save them by turning back time. And when he gave up his friends, did he give up his soul as well? And he became that hard-hearted person? I went to the den. I showed him his diary. What is it? Without paying much attention, he took the diary and flipped the pages. Instantly, his face became distorted. He was as still as if he had frozen on the spot. He didn't look at me or close the diary. His eyes were glued to it. His hand turned the pages. His expression changed to one of pain. The will to forget and the wish to remember crisscrossed his face. It was impossible to read his expressions. When he met his voters and supporters, he looked trustworthy or modest, but that was one of his many masks. A look of pain was on his face now. I stared at him in disbelief. You know about the redevelopment plan. Hearing that, he closed the diary. I don't know where you found this, but it's all in the past. Too much time has passed, and too many things have happened. The expression on his face vanished again. You had friends who were important to you, and you tried many times to save them. I did not utter that out loud. I knew that he would know, without my saying it. He knew why I had handed him the diary, but my dad's answer was no. Can you think about it one more time? It's not too late, and you can make this right. I asked him as he was about to leave. He slowly turned back and said, "It has nothing to do with me now." You know, I still think it's crazy that his dad went through the same exact thing and just, never talked about it. Next entry is on the same day. It's by J-Hope. After the meeting at the classroom, we had not heard from Seokjin. Songju was seething with talk of the redevelopment plan, and it was the same with me and Namjoon. Are they going to go ahead with it? Have you heard anything else? I asked Namjoon after hearing about the eviction notice, but he didn't have anything to tell me. Knowing the state we were in, Yoongi, Taehyung, and Jimin texted us from time to time, beating around the bush and asking if we were doing okay. According to Jungkook's friend, who dropped by the burger joint, he particularly lived at a PC room, but I thought they got it wrong. The Jungkook that I knew would frequent a PC room but would not get addicted to it. However, I saw him walking into a PC room a couple of days later. I wasn't thinking about checking on him. It was the first time seeing him after that day, and I hadn't even gotten a chance to talk to him much when we had met together in that classroom. Top place PC room was on the 5th floor. There was no elevator. I walked up with my legs still in a cast. Inside, the people with headsets on were all staring at their monitors, under a dim light. Some were snacking and watching a drama or movie, but most of them were playing computer games. They were talking into the mic and clicking fast with the mouse. I heard them say, "Kill him, don't lose him." Glancing at the rows of chairs, I walked all the way to the farthest chairs from the entrance. From behind, I saw someone in a leather chair. He was playing a shooting game, pressing the keyboard with his left hand. He was clicking the mouse like mad with his right hand. Every time his character moved, the monitor screen changed color. I lowered my head to get a better look at him. The light changed from blue to red as it shone on the player's face. After staring for a while, I realized he was Jungkook. With his headset on, Jungkook kept his eyes glued to the monitor. He didn't hesitate as he shot down the characters in the game. He killed as if he had been planning on shooting them one by one. He cussed on or sneered at them. He was so focused that he didn't know I was there. I couldn't call him. I just looked at the monitor. Jungkook was gunning down the characters as if to pour out his rage. "Win!" showed up on the screen, and the game ended. The screen turned black. The black screen reflected Jungkook's face. His eyes looked vacant. I was also reflected on the screen, but Jungkook did not notice, as if he was trapped in this world. I was about to tap his shoulder but stopped. What had happened to him? I became afraid. So Jungkook is becoming the blanked face individual, because he's slipping into depression. Next entry is Jin on August 10th, a few days later. When I walked out, it was raining. It didn't look like it would stop anytime soon. I drove my car to the main road, past Songju Station, and was near Yoongi's workroom. The stores in the cleared out area had big X marks on them, with rotting trash bags piled up in front. The road was uphill but sloped down soon. Weeds were growing between the houses with broken windows. It was clear what I had to do, but I couldn't help but hesitate. It was not easy to admit my mistakes and face the arrows of criticisms and finger-pointing from the world. I went through the documents I had found during the past days, the papers in the safe inside the inner room, papers guaranteeing kickbacks from a construction company, slush funds, shoddy construction and profiteering, contract ad libitum, dual contracts, and also papers fabricated to conceal all these illegal dealings. What? Some corporate conspiracy going on, dude. The one who had done all this was my father. Too much time had passed, and too many things have happened, he had said. He might be right. Now I'd gotten to a place of no return. That didn't mean I should stand by and watch. If he couldn't do it, then I would. I turned the car around and headed to the area 4. I saw a container village between the trees. After passing Songju Middle School and turning the corner, I saw the Youngji Children's Home. Nobody was out in the wet playground. There were puddles with raindrops falling into them. The signal changed, and I slowly drove to the residential area across from the orphanage. I passed the old houses and the identical-looking low buildings. A banner hanging between utility poles in front of a rundown supermarket said, "The redevelopment is not for the people." Who is it for? The people walking under the umbrellas stepped aside to avoid getting splashed by my car. I took out my phone. I called a reporter who had disclosed the first document concerning the redevelopment plan. "Have you thought about what consequences this would bring? Are you sure you can handle it?" When he asked, I said I didn't. When he asked, "Does this mean you might go back on your word?" I answered no. The reporter confirmed one more time and hung up. I glanced out. I had no confidence, or anything like it, to handle what was about to happen. Despite all the wrongful and illegal dealings he had committed, he was still my father, but it was too late to go back, and I had no thought of going back. I had done enough regretting. Now, I had to do what I had to do. I clicked on the chat room on my phone. Ooh, he's about to let him know. J-Hope's entry August 11th, the next day. Sukjin texted us to meet at Namjoon's container. I left the burger joint and quickened my steps. It was past 10, but we were still in the middle of summer. The city was suffering in air that would not cool down. As the doctor took the cast off, he had warned me not to exert my leg, but I was in a hurry. What did Sukjin want to talk to us about? We'd be meeting for the first time since that day in the classroom. Did he have something on the redevelopment plan? Would he explain what had happened to him? I sent a separate text to Jungkook, but he didn't reply. When I called him, he took his sweet time answering. He must have been in a PC room, for it was very noisy. Sukjin must have something to tell us, Jungkook, I told him. You are the last, we chided Jungkook for being the last one to arrive. We were all in the container. Isn't it hot? When someone said that, we all came out and sat around behind the sofa. The sofa, which had repeatedly gotten wet and frozen, was pretty crushed. When Taehyung jumped on it, the dust flew up and corner fabric ripped. Yoongi took a big step back. All 7 of us were together, but we weren't as rowdy as before. Maybe we should get a campfire going. When Taehyung said that, Namjoon, who was used to his jokes, replied, "It's in the middle of summer, Taehyung." Sukjin was sitting quietly. He looked serious, but he didn't seem as strange or emotionless as he had been before. Actually, he looked tired. What? Yoongi got expelled because of you. What? Yoongi got expelled because of you? You were the principal's snitch? I asked him, surprised. Sukjin started telling us what had happened back in high school. What are you saying exactly? When I pressed on, Namjoon grabbed me and mentioned me to stop. Sukjin continued about his family, him growing up in America, and the first day he had met the principal after coming back to Songju. No one spoke for a while. Sweat ran down our spines, but no one even thought about fanning himself to cool down. I looked at Yoongi, the very person whom Sukjin's story was about. I didn't know what he was thinking because he kept his head low. 2 years had passed since then. If he hadn't been expelled, would things have turned out differently for him? Finally, Yoongi opened his mouth. It's all in the past, but it would have been better if you had told me this back then. Sukjin said he was sorry, and Yoongi simply nodded. Sukjin's confession seemed like closure to what had happened to Yoongi, but not really. It had happened in the past, but because of it, things in the present had changed. and it was the same for Yoongi and Seokjin. Just saying it was okay did not make it okay. They probably had to mull it over for many hours and arrive at a certain conclusion, or it would stay with them forever. Tomorrow I plan to tell people everything about the redevelopment plan. Seokjin said as he was taking a bunch of papers out of his bag. The agreement with the police overlooking the violence during the demolition was just the tip of the iceberg. The corruption among the power holders of Songju and my dad is beyond anyone's imagination. He told us in a slow voice. I think my coming forward will take care of many things, but I'm not sure how things will unfold. After looking at me and then Namjoon, Seokjin said, what I am about to tell you now is much more complicated and strange. I'm not sure you'll believe it. It's hard to believe, but Yoongi was right. Now is the time I should tell you. Oh man, is he gonna tell him, dude? Tell him everything! Okay, Seokjin took a deep breath and started telling us the story. Finding out the future misfortunes of everyone after he came back from America, the cat that he met at the beach, the contract to turn back time, and the things he had experienced over and over again since then, the map of the soul, and the price to pay, losing his memories. I didn't know when the sandstorm started to blow. Seokjin continued with this story, and like he said, it was really hard to believe. Can he really turn back time? Is that possible? He can undo what happened? Jungkook, Yoongi, and Jimin got killed? I fell down the stairs and couldn't dance anymore, and Taehyung got locked up in jail? That really happened again and again? I had no idea whether the sandstorm began while Seokjin was talking or not. Maybe it started when he began to tell us the story, or maybe there was no sandstorm. As Seokjin continued with the story, the wind became stronger. We could hardly keep our eyes open with the sandstorm blustering around us. The sofa we were all sitting on, Namjoon's container, and maybe the whole of the city. We ended up closing our eyes, shedding tears from the prickly rain of sand. We could not see with our eyes, but we could feel it, as if we had experienced it ourselves, something flashing as time began to go back, the sound of a window being shattered, the room with the sunlight pouring in, and what Seokjin saw as he opened his eyes in his room. Okay, is this a story, or is this happening? The sound of flames starting from a lighter and traveling up the stream of gasoline, the building rooftop still under construction, the speed of one free falling into the night scene of Songju. The moment the world turned upside down, his ankle bone was crushed. The sound of suffocation as he was dragged deeper and deeper into the water. The azure sky he saw from the courthouse. The moment he picked up a broken bottle. His unleashed rage as he ran. The blood that couldn't be washed off his hands. The time going back again. Something flashing. So this is like, the reversal part in Euphoria. Seokjin running, the window being shattered again, the calendar pages being leafed through, Yoongi, Namjoon, me, Jimin, Taehyung, and Jungkook again, and another flash. Seokjin standing alone at the beach, the moments of horror continuing endlessly. Seokjin running and running again, a Polaroid picture, the 7 of us standing by the beach. In the sandstorm, I finally understood what had happened to Seokjin, the choices he had made, his mistakes, and the endless hours he had lived through again and again for us, and the reason he had lost his memories and feelings. I slowly opened my eyes. It was still midsummer and I was in Songju. Nothing had changed from the beginning. The air still felt hot and the sofa felt sandy. A can rolled away behind the container. No one spoke. The sandstorm disappeared without a trace and the moon hung in the night sky. I wanted to say I was sorry and I was grateful, but my lips wouldn't move. No. Those words could not begin to express the feelings I had. What, dude? The visuals and reading those paragraphs was insane, bro. I'm sure y'all could hear it at the speed I was reading. That's nuts. That was good. Okay. We're getting into the good stuff. Alright. Okay. This next entry is on August 11th. It's by Taehyung. I walked for a long time with my hands shoved into my pockets. I tried my best not to look up at the sky or to look around. I passed Yoongi's workroom, construction site, Nari gas station, the Mokrion apartments, and Gyeonggil Hospital. If I looked up, I was afraid I would remember what Seokjin had told me, so I walked with my eyes glued to the ground. Seokjin had told us matter-of-factly, but we couldn't listen matter-of-factly. What he said was not something you could listen to sitting down. I went over it countless times. I thought they were all dreams, but they really had happened. After Sukjin finished telling us, silence lasted a long time. No one spoke, but the thunderous silence shook the container. And he's gotta be, like, tripping because he was dreaming everything. And to find out it all happened. It's nuts. Only when I got to my graffiti did I look up. Sukjin in my nightmare was still there. I didn't feel a chill exuding from it. I wasn't afraid anymore. I touched his vacant eyes. Did destiny really exist? I heard someone singing from afar. If everything has been decided, then the fact that I'm standing here and now had been decided too. Then someone among us will die or get into an accident. Maybe we had all survived and I was still here because he didn't give up on us. I drew the pupils with my fingers. Maybe the future would change, depending on how we were to draw the present now. I left the alley and looked at the city. I saw Songjunjao High School in the distance. Behind it were the railways and stream. Beyond them would be the big, wide world. I felt like crying. So I shoved my hands back into my pockets and walked with my head hung low. So now we're dealing with the aftermath of the realization of everything going on. I wonder what Jungkook's mental state is going to be having heard everything. And we're about to find out because Jungkook's entry is next on the same day, August 11th. I had to snicker. Yeah, like any of what he said made any sense. Soon after Sukjin started telling us his story, all the others looked as if they totally understood what he was saying. Understood what? Sukjin had lied to us since high school. Yoongi got expelled because of Sukjin, but he glossed over that point with a simple "I'm sorry." Sukjin fed us some wild story about things he claimed he had done for us. The others didn't even ask questions or point their fingers, and accepted all of it. I stood up from the very end of the sofa. I hurried out to the main road. Sukjin had not mentioned it, even in the end. After mouthing off like a person of great moral character disclosing his father's immoral acts, he had never uttered a word about the car accident that night. Liar. I looked back. They were going into the container one by one. No one looked out. They had no idea I had left. Dude, he's gotta be feeling like crap, and I'm kinda disappointed that Jin didn't tell everybody. I feel you. I empathize. Jungkook, I empathize. Okay, August 11th, Jimin's entry. Where's Jungkook? Hearing me exclaim, the others looked around only to find him gone. Hoseok looked outside and said, he's not here either. I phoned him, but I got voicemail. Taeyoung said, is he going through puberty or what? But we'd all felt it. Lately, Jungkook had become quiet and brooding. I walked with Hoseok to the community center. Cars with their headlights on whizzed by. After walking without a word, Hoseok said, Jungkook hasn't called you, has he? I shook my head. Another silence. Is he okay, you suppose? Suddenly, there was a loud honking sound, a shrill, nerve-wracking sound. I turned to where the sound came from. A boy who had been jaywalking crouched on the road with his hands over his ears. He was surrounded by the headlights of the cars coming to a screeching halt. Oh, come on, Jungkook, man. The next day. This is Jin's entry of August 12th. I walked into the meeting room of the newspaper company. The reporter I'd talked to on the phone shook my hand. It's inevitable that you'll be followed by reporters once the news gets out. I nodded and took out the documents from my bag. This proves that my dad received kickbacks from Youngjin Engineering and Construction. I handed them to him. And this is a record of what they went through to get the redevelopment committee head's request to my dad and to get the mayor of Songju expedite the plan. After pursuing the document, the reporter asked, do you mean to release all of these? I nodded, tensed up, I tightened my fists. The interview lasted a long time. At the end of it, the reporter asked me, you must have a reason for disclosing all of these. I couldn't come up with an answer. It had nothing to do with justice or conviction. I wasn't doing it to help someone. I thought about the endless time loops and moments of despair. There was no way I could convey all of that. If there was one reason, I was doing it for myself. I finally said, I'm ready. All the errors and mistakes can't be undone, but the first stage of making things right again will be to acknowledge my errors. To do that, I shouldn't run away or hide. What I said was a spell I was telling myself, a spell to remind myself that I'd do my very best to face head-on what was about to come. I mean, good for him for taking it to the newspaper and putting it all out there, but what are you gonna do about Jungkook, dude? This is Yoongi's entry, August 12th, I think it's the same day. It was a night on a weekend. and the restaurant was crowded. The news was on TV. For the past several days, there had been nothing but news about the redevelopment plan. Today, again, it was about the newly discovered illegal dealings. The news began pictures of the rundown areas of Songju, followed by the commentary of the anchor. The people who were eating all around turned their attention to the TV. There's been a continuing controversy concerning the Songju redevelopment plan. Last month, a document was discovered concerning an illegal agreement between City Hall and police to overlook possible violence expected during the forced clearance of the area. Mr. Kim Suk-jin, the son of Assemblyman Kim Chong-jun, asked to be interviewed to disclose the connection between the politicians and the companies, and what you are about to watch is a portion of that interview. When the anchor's comment ended, they showed Suk-jin's interview in summary. The part about the Assemblyman Kim Chong-jun getting kickbacks from the construction company created a stir in the restaurant. A man from the next table said, "I knew it, I knew it." That was why the police said they would keep their hands off of it. Someone put his spoon down and said, "Then are they going to put a stop to the plan? It was going to create more jobs, but now what?" I looked around. Reproach and anger were everywhere. I heard a man say behind me, "Wait a minute, did the son just report his own father to the police?" I couldn't begin to fathom the weight that Suk-jin had to carry from now on. Dude, it's gotta be crazy, the fact that you know a person, you see him on TV, they're taking this huge step, this huge risk. Everyone's getting upset about stuff because they're confused. It's not that they don't agree, it's just that they're confused. And all you can do is hear it and listen, and like no one knows but you. But it is getting interesting, so. Next entry is on the same day, Jimin, August 12th. Lying on the bed, I searched online with my phone. There was an article about Suk-jin disclosing his father's illegal dealings. From the interview, I could feel Suk-jin's determination to face this head on. Even after the interview was aired, the redevelopment plan and Suk-jin's name were the top search words. After getting some clout, and after reading some more comments under the articles, I tossed my phone onto the bed. I got up and glanced out the window. It was the middle of August, hazy and sweltering outside, and I remember the last thing Suk-jin had said in the interview. "I will admit to all my errors and mistakes. I will not hide or run away." Could I face my own errors and mistakes? Could I not run away and hide? The bus stop for the shuttle bus to the grass flower arboretum. Oh my god, we're going back to the glass flower arboretum was hot in the summer sunlight. The sun was at its zenith, casting practically no shadow at my feet. There was no place to hide from it. I turned to see whether the bus was coming. I saw the road post for Grass Flower Arboretum. I looked down at my feet. My neck felt hot with sweat dripping down. Sitting at the bus stop, I let 2 buses go by. Under the scorching sun, my head hurt and it felt hot, and I hesitated, unable to make any decision. My body felt sticky with sweat, and my shoulders ached from tension. Letting out a sigh, I leaned against the bus stop bench. The sun came directly down on my face. I couldn't keep my eyes open, and my skin felt burnt. I sensed someone sitting next to me. Strangely enough, it made me feel relieved and at ease. When I looked, no one was there. The bus driver yelled, "Are you going to get on or what?" I sat in the middle of the bus by the window. A lady holding a baby in her arms and baby's grandmother sat closer to the driver, and a middle school couple sat way in the back. The bus started moving. It drove non-stop toward a place I had stayed away from all this time. I rolled my arm and looked around. The air-conditioned bus felt cold. I didn't know hydrangeas are summer flowers. I liked hydrangeas. Only when I heard the young couple talk did I realize Grass Flower Arboretum was a place of flowers and plants. I remember the place was wet with sinking mud. To some, it was a place of excitement, but to someone else, it was a place he wanted to forget. It was not fair. I lowered my head and closed my eyes. That day I must have been sitting on the bus, excited and happy. I must have watched the changing scenery out the window with curious eyes, munching on cookies and singing with my friends. Because it was the day of the school picnic, I felt my hands and feet shrinking. So he's starting to have flashbacks, right? Because he doesn't really remember, but he kind of, he's just been scared of the place. I woke up at a thump. I must have dozed off after having stayed under the sun too long, all tensed up. The bus came to a stop. The other passengers must have gotten off. I couldn't see them. It was raining outside, and when I got on the bus, it had been broad daylight, but now it was so dark that I had no idea what time it was. Lightning cut across the dark sky, followed by thunder. I peeked out from the bus door, but no one was around. Covering my head with my hands, I ran to the entrance of the arboretum. The rain sloshed down. Even before I could take a couple of steps, my trousers got wet. It was just like that day, the school picnic day. My parents couldn't come, so I walked alongside my teacher all day long. Despite my teacher's advice, I decided to go home by myself. It started to pour down when I was just outside the arboretum gate. The sudden shower turned into the torrential rain, where I couldn't see a thing. I was soaking wet and trembling with cold. Holding my backpack over my head, I ran. There was no one to help me, and I ended up running toward the back gate of the arboretum. There was a storage-looking building by the gate. I opened the door and walked on. 10 years had passed since then. To forget that day and to erase the memories of that day, I had been in and out of hospitals, medicated, lied, and suffered seizures. Ever since that day, I tried my best to run away from this place. But I remembered what Sakjin had said. I will admit to all my errors and mistakes. I will not hide or run away. I walked across the arboretum. It was still pouring down, but I didn't run or try to avoid it. I walked slowly to the back gate. In my memory, the place was huge. So huge that people would not know what was happening in one corner of it. 10 years later, I realized how ridiculously small the place was. There was a small parking lot and flower beds by the entrance, and I saw a management office a little far off. And once you followed the Grove Trail, it would take less than 3 minutes for a grown-up to get to the storage building from the management office. And I finally saw the back gate, as well as the storage building. Inadvertently, I stopped. The storage building with the corroding iron door looked exactly the same as it did in my memories. Darkness which seemed familiar leaked out from the partly open door. I took a step closer but stopped again. Still drenched and shivering with cold, I tried to take a deep breath, but I couldn't stop myself from shivering. That day, I had run into the dark storage building. I was dripping wet, and the early April air felt cold. I squatted in one corner. I was glad to get away from the rain, but soon I was trembling from cold. I covered myself with ripped papers and wrappings from the ground and curled up in a ball. I woke up at the clanking sound of the iron door closing, and I heard someone breathing. I stayed all curled up like before, without moving a muscle. It was dark inside the storage building. There were shelves with things piled in a row, things I couldn't tell what they were for. I smelled rain and dirt. I couldn't tell what was going on, but I knew one thing. I should not be discovered. The place was filled with tension. When my eyes adjusted to the dark, I began to see the inside. The storage building was the size of a school classroom. I was hiding by the back door. There was a tiny room where the podium would be if this was a classroom. A faint light gleamed from the room's window, and I heard a panting sound, like a signal to let me know someone was there. I stood up. I knew I shouldn't, but I crept toward the window. I knew I shouldn't look at what was beyond the window, but I still crawled toward it. My legs trembled. The raindrops dripped from my hair and trickled down my neck. At that moment, a small white hand suddenly appeared at the window and disappeared. I gasped. Frozen to the spot, every cell in my body screamed for me to run away, but my legs wouldn't move, and I went blank. And I heard someone whistling outside. The door clanked and opened. I jumped and crawled under a desk to hide. A man came in and looked for something, making the clanking sound of metal scraping against metal. The man walked into the room, leaving the door open, so I could look inside. It was dark there too, but things inside were visible. It looked like a room for storing fertilizer. He walked in, with his legs apart. He looked down on something. The man's eyes fell on a small boy lying on the floor, all curled up. He had bruises on his arms and legs and scars on his wrists from being tied up with the rope for too long. The man picked up a towel from the shelf and wiped the sweat from his own face and hands. The boy opened his eyes. For a brief moment his eyes met mine, and I was all crouched under the desk. The boy lay seemingly dead under the man's peering eyes. The boy's eyes were speaking to me. It was dark, and he was far away, but I knew. There was no way I could not know. He was asking for help. Help me, save me, help me run away. The man, sensing nothing, turned around and looked around the storage room. I made myself smaller. The boy's hand fumbled on the floor, as if he was looking for something, and he slowly raised his body. He was trembling. With big teardrops rolling down on his cheeks, he raised his hand. He was holding something shiny in his hand, a box cutter. He cut the man on his thigh with the box cutter. He yelped in pain as he turned. The boy tried to stab him one more time, but it didn't work. The man unarmed the boy in no time. Then he threw away the box cutter and he slammed the door shut. I heard him cussing at the boy. The boy screamed. I heard something breaking, splitting, and crashing. There was also an odd jangling sound. I could crawl out from under the desk thanks to the noise. I crawled to the door with my shaking legs. I tried my best not to make any sound. I crawled right under the window so that I would not be seen from the window. The boy's screams turned into wailing and gradually subsided. As soon as I got out, I nearly burst out screaming. The sound of gushing rain overwhelmed me. Tears fell. While running away, my knees buckled and I tumbled down in the mud. I got up again and ran. I wanted to yell for help for someone to save me, but no one was around. My feet slipped again. My trousers got torn and knees scraped. Immediately, the blood seeped through the trousers. Without meaning to, I ended up looking back. By then, I was out the back gate of the Arboretum. The storage building looked faint. In my eyes, I saw the boy's white hand. It was bleeding. The next thing I remembered was the hospital. I saw my parents, a doctor, and a nurse. And everyone asked me one thing: what happened? I said I didn't remember. And it was true. Back then, I really couldn't remember. The memories of that day came back one day in my first year of high school when I was going home from school. I was walking with Hosek when I saw the boy in the shuttle bus to the glass flower arboretum. His empty eyes no longer spoke to me. Interesting. We're not done with this chapter. I'm gonna keep going. Interesting how, everyone's, in order to, face those memories and move on. In order to move on from those memories, you have to face those memories. Break in the segment means a time change. They released only the boy's last name, Choi, and he was 5 at the time. I found this outline. Several articles detailed the incident. He was discovered near Hwayong Mountain on April 10th, and he suffered from temporary amnesia caused by shock. The police were looking for clues to conduct an investigation of the case, but there were no follow-up articles on it. I wondered how he had survived. I wondered whether it would be possible for him and me to have been spared what we suffered. To have a different past in which the boy spent that day playing with his friends instead of being dragged to the Arboretum by a stranger, and I stayed home with cold instead of going on school picnic. So was he not the boy? Was it another person? I already knew the answer, but with my mind wondering about meaningless possibilities, I arrived at the storage building by the back gate of the Arboretum. I couldn't change the past. I had no means to correct my past errors and mistakes. The day I had come here on a school picnic, and while roaming the place by myself, I had become wet in the rain. I had gone into the storage building and run away by myself, leaving a boy behind in pain and despair. In the distance under the pouring rain, I was running away, my small feet so closed, tears streaming down my face and my terrified eyes. The day I was out of breath, panting and heaving. I ran precariously, as if I would collapse at any minute. A short moment later, my feet slipped and I tumbled down. I stayed fallen and blank, but startled by something. I started to run away. The mud caked on my face and elbows crumbled and fell. I had to run away endlessly from memories I couldn't escape from. I stepped closer to the boy. He was running faster. To catch him, I had to run faster. I splashed mud with my feet, and I slipped many times. I plopped down in the mud and sprawled in it. Finally, I caught up with him. I grabbed his shoulders and turned him around. He looked up at me with his frightened eyes. His eyes spoke to me and asked me what was happening to him. I couldn't tell him anything. "You're going to be okay." The words came up through my throat, but I couldn't utter them out loud. The words I could say easily to others, but why was it I could not say them to myself? I braced the scared boy in my arms. I felt his drenched body and pounding heart. I spoke slowly, stammering, "Wait just a little longer. When you grow up a bit, you'll meet wonderful friends. When you're with your friends, you'll become a better person. Then you'll be fine. So wait just a little longer and hang in there." With that, I hugged him harder. My eyes welled up. I couldn't hold it anymore and cried. I had no idea how much time had passed, and when I opened my eyes, the little boy, me, was gone. Oh, it was him, dude, what? I wiped my eyes and looked at the sky. It was clear without even a wisp of a cloud, and it was quiet. There was no trace of rain anywhere. So all this was a flashback. This is gonna make for a killer vid, dude. It's gonna make for a killer video. I can't wait to see this illustrated. And they got the show, like the show is going to be coming out soon too. That's going to be, ooh, it's going to be epic. It's going to be epic. My beard looks really fluffy today. I don't know why. I need to put something in it. Anyway. 17th of August, 5 days later, Namjoon puts in his entry and it says, it had been 5 days since Seokjin came forward, disclosing his father's illegal dealings. The raging wind had started with the newspaper report had not died down. Transformed into a bigger whirlwind, it was swallowing up the whole city. There is no end to people's greed. It doesn't matter how much you have, you always want more. Everyone had something to say about it. More disclosures followed. The connection between Assemblyman Kim Chong-jun, the mayor of Songju, the president of Yongjin Engineering and Construction, and the head of the redevelopment committee was in the foreground of the news. People protested and demanded that Kim Chong-jun and the mayor of Songju step down, and it was suggested that Kim's chief aide, Song Jun-ho, who had disappeared, was the key planner in all the dealings. There were people who were worried about having the redevelopment plan nullified. The regional media voiced their concern over putting a stop to the important project for the area just because of unprecedented corruption. They emphasized the necessity of redevelopment along with the financial loss that would be caused by this incident. I read all the articles and news comments, but the whole course of events that had led to this was complicated and difficult to understand. If I listen to the supporters of the redevelopment plan, they seem right, but if I listen to the opposition, they seem right too. Fortunately, because they put a stop to the plan, Yeonji Children's Home and Container Village were given a moment to take a sigh of relief. People didn't look kindly at Seokjin, who was in the middle of this tornado. Dang, that sucks. He reported his own father. He must have a motive for doing it. When I saw him at the container a couple of days ago, he seemed unperturbed. I wondered how long it would take for all this to go away. I wasn't sure if it ever would, and it made me afraid. It's crazy. Okay. So we're getting closer to September, August 20th, right? And a lot's gone on with just a few individuals within the story since the revelation. Okay, Jin's entry on August 20th. This is 3 days later, I think. They put a stop to the redevelopment plan and arrested the people involved in the corruption one at a time. My father was not an exception. Because he was in the middle of it all, he was most criticized. The house was surrounded with reporters when I came back after the interview. The landline phone was pulled out and our mobile phones rang incessantly. Dad was in the den. I hesitated for a long time before knocking on the door and going in. He was looking at something, and he put it in the drawer and turned to me. I'm sorry, Dad. I knew what I said could not possibly solve the problem. Dad didn't say a word. I stood there. His phone started ringing. So did my phone. I heard a commotion from outside. Go and get some rest. He stood up and went into the inner room. Since the interview, people had poured out endless news reports. There was enough news to make people discombobulated. Even I couldn't tell what was true or false. What turned out to be the biggest problem for Dad was Uncle Jun-ho. He had disappeared right after the news of his involvement. For days, they reported that he had handled the kickbacks and dual contracts. The amount, which was much bigger than what I discovered, had been handed over through Uncle Jun-ho. Speculation snowballed. Some saw him as the very center of the corruption. Some said that my dad had made him flee to the overseas, or that he would turn up in a body bag soon. Some tried to have him take a rap for the whole thing. Some claimed that my dad was using him to weasel his way out of it. That's what I was thinking, just putting that out there. Dad looked tired when he came home after being interrogated for hours by the police. They asked him for the whereabouts of Uncle Jun-ho, but he didn't tell them. My guess was that Uncle had pocketed some money behind my dad's back. Probably wasn't much. Unlike what people are saying, Uncle Jun-ho wasn't ambitious or brazenly greedy. He was more like someone who blunders over a small amount and ends up walking into a bigger blunder to make up for his first mistake. One day I overheard Dad's phone conversation. He said we had to find him before Yongjin Engineering Construction did, the company involved in this whole incident. Uncle Jun-ho had been reported as the one who closed the illegal deal with the company and received a huge kickback. I realized things might be more serious than I thought. Uncle Jun-ho might be pursued by the company people, or he might be hiding somewhere, trying to figure out a way to vent his frustration somehow. Things escalated. People petitioned to disclose every illegal detail deal committed by my father and Uncle Jun Ho, and the protests for and against the redevelopment became more violent. Walking back and forth in front of my dad's den, I thought about whether all this was the result of my decision, whether I was too hasty to disclose it, whether I had brought on this irreversible catastrophe. I mean, he kinda did. I was terrified. If I hadn't come forth, something worse could have happened. However, it doesn't mean that things were okay. I was afraid to open my eyes every morning, and I couldn't bear to look at my dad. Yeah, because he still thinks the loop's gonna start over, right? Alright, Namjoon's entry is August of 22nd. It says, after work, I went back to the container. I had to use the flashlight function on my phone to light the way. The street was darker than usual. It was hard to see with just the hazy moonlight. As soon as I got to the container village, I saw someone sitting in front of my container. Who was that? I knew everyone around my place. He looked drunk. After seeing me, he staggered up, and I thought I had seen him somewhere, but couldn't figure out where. I approached him with caution. Everything is ruined because of you, he said. He looked a sight. He was bleary-eyed, and his white shirt was all crumpled up. You talked Sok Jin into this, didn't you? You ruined everything. He kept babbling about things I couldn't understand. He walked towards me making threats, but too drunk, he ended up kneeling over. I asked him if he was okay. When I knelt down over him, he grabbed my collar. He reeked of booze. I tried to loosen his grip, but he resisted adamantly. The next moment, I lost my balance and fell over. Because he was still holding my collar, we rolled on top of each other on the pebbles. Namjoon! A flashlight shone in the dark, and it landed on my face. When he grimaced and twisted his body, pushed his hand away and stood up. The man staggered to his feet, said, "You haven't seen the last of me," and he walked away. Namjoon, who is that? Wu Chang stepped closer with the flashlight in his hand. 24th of August. J-Hope's entry. On the bridge over the Yangtze Stream, I was looking down on the railway. The station announced a rocket coming into the platform. The people got on the train one by one. And with another beep, the rocket was launched. I felt the wind blowing from it on my back. I watched the rocket zooming in and zooming out. As I watched the train becoming a distant blur, I wondered where it was going. Was it going to Hagak? On the other side was Songju. From this distance, it looked peaceful and dull. It was hard to believe that it was a very place of chaos that had lasted for weeks. With the redevelopment pushed back, the orphanage people were able to take a breather. On the surface, at least, things were returning to normal. But were they really? Could the future be changed that simply? Sometimes everything changed or things got messed up because of one tiny mishap. The problems you thought were solved could be hiding somewhere ready to jump on when you were least expecting them. Oh god. I walked away from the railing. The night wind felt cool. Thinking vaguely I was heading home, I started walking. Songju sometimes felt as small as your palm, but other times it felt terrifyingly big. My room on the rooftop seemed more far away than usual. I felt that line so much, dude, because it's like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop constantly, right? Like, what's gonna happen next? Alright, next day, on the 25th of August, Jin writes, I thought long about sending this text. They're not going to clear the container village now, are they? And the fire accident won't happen, right? Namjoon said he met a strange man in front of his container the other day, and he was short with a round face. Is he someone you know? When I got this text from Taehyung, I understood the source of the strange anxiety that had lasted for days. The man had to be Uncle Jun Ho. He must have gotten drunk and harassed Namjoon. I had succeeded in ending the time loop, but since then too many new things had happened and I couldn't predict at all what result would be brought about by my actions. I couldn't eliminate the possibility that an accident irrelevant to the clearing of the village could occur. It was out of my hands now. I called Namjoon. The ringing continued for a long time. I turned on the car engine and stepped into the accelerator. It might be nothing, but I could only be assured after I saw it with my own eyes. When I turned to the right, toward the railway, there was heavy traffic. I craned my neck out the window but couldn't really see a thing. I called Namjoon again, but he still didn't pick up. It was way past rush hour, but the cars were stuck on the road. I parked the car by the roadside and started running. Soon I saw the container village. There was no fire, no one there to force the people out, no hired thugs, but I couldn't help feeling apprehensive. When I got closer to the place, I smelled something. When I thought it must be gasoline, A fire erupted from Namjoon's container, and I heard someone screaming a name. Was it Namjoon? I turned the corner. Uncle Jun-ho was there. I didn't recognize him at first, with his hair disheveled and his sodden clothes, and there was a gasoline canister by his feet. Uncle, what the hell are you doing? He stared at me. He sneered, and he started to giggle, and his knees buckled, and he plopped on the ground. I ran to him. What have you done? He reeked of booze. This is not fair, he said. Not fair, he screamed. At that instant, Namjoon ran towards us. He was holding a small plastic bag in his hand. Namjoon threw it down on the ground and ran to the burning container. Instant noodle cups rolled out of the plastic bag. Namjoon, no! I screamed, but Namjoon jumped over the flame and threw himself against the container door. Tensions are high right now, bro. 25th of August, the next day. Namjoon, right? This is the next day, or is this the same day? Yeah, next day. So he made it, because he's writing an entry, right? I landed flat on the container floor, made of iron. The container was filled with so much heat that I couldn't keep my eyes open. I narrowed my eyes and tried to see. Wu Chang was there. 10 minutes ago, I'd left saying I'll go and buy some instant noodles. Oh, so this must be the kid. The kid who kicks the, soccer ball around. Okay. I turned toward a coughing sound and Wu Chang was all curled up in the corner. Wu Chang, are you okay? I took a blanket and wet it with water bottle and covered Wu Chang with it. Pointing to the door, I told him, you have to run to the door. Wu Chang, you can do it. But the door was soon surrounded by huge flames from outside. I grip Wu Chang's hand, and when I say 3, you run to the door. 1, 2. Just then something toppled down in front of the door, the construction material that had been piled up next to the container. The flames rose high in the midst of the dust. Scared, Wu Chang and I stepped back. We had no exit. Clang clang! I turned to the sound and saw Seok-jin through the window. He was trying to pull off the security grill. I stepped on a chair, and with the wet towel wrapped around my hand, I tried to push out the window. The wet towel sizzled when I put my hand on the heated window frame. Outside the window, Seok-jin was trying to pry out the grill with a stick. I coughed from the smoke. Because of the heat, I couldn't breathe or keep my eyes open. Finally, there was enough space for Wu Chang to escape. Seok-jin, be careful! I threw Wu Chang through the window to Seok-jin, and I had no strength left. The container was filled with smoke. I heard the sirens coming from afar. After taking a couple steps back, I collapsed, and I slowly blacked out. We know he made it because he wrote it, right? But, I'm super, tense now because of it. Same day, Jin's entry, 25th of August. Namjoon! I called him, but nothing. Kim Namjoon! I couldn't see the inside of the smoke-filled container. Hang in there, the fire engine's coming! Nothing. Tried to pull off the grill and call out Namjoon's name at the same time. Smoke was everywhere, inside and outside the container. Boom! A metal ladder toppled down on the container. Kim Namjoon! I screamed his name again. It was then that Namjoon stuck his towel-wrapped arm through the window. I clutched the window frame and pulled it as hard as I could. After pulling it off, I held out my hand. Namjoon grabbed it. I gave it everything I had and pulled Namjoon out. Here! Someone yelled. The paramedics came running with the stretcher. Oh, good job, Jin. Good job. Okay. Namjoon writes another entry on the 25th of August, same day. When I opened my eyes, I was laying in the middle of the road. I saw the leafless trees and the white sky above them, and huge snowflakes fell. I sat up, and I saw the white chalk marked of a person where I had been laying. How did I get here? I looked around. Why are you here? I turned to the voice, and I saw Jung-hun sitting on his scooter. He didn't look changed at all. No! I just got goosebumps, bro. Tell me he didn't die. Why are you here? I asked, but interrupting me, Jung-hun pointed to the back seat of his scooter. As I got up, I felt something sharp in my hand. A piece of the scooter headlight I had left behind. When I got on the scooter, it lurched and got going. The wind was blowing on the face, but soon I felt the hot air. I shut my eyes. Kim Namjoon, wake up! I opened my eyes again, hearing someone calling my name. Seok-jin was looking down on me. Behind him I saw a white curtain and medical equipment. Only then did I realize I was in the hospital. Oh, thank God! Dude, and the last thing I remember was grabbing his hand. Am I okay? I sat up, looked down at my hands and feet. You passed out from inhaling too much smoke. I nodded, looking at my unhurt hands, and then my palms. Bye, was what I had heard sitting on the back seat of the scooter. Dude, please make a TV show about this. Like, get it going. I know it's in the works, but get it going. I need to see this TV show. This needs to be a thing, or like a really long movie, right? Jimin. August 26th, the next day. I bolted up. I took out my phone and saw breaking news. Fire at the illegal container village in Songju. Suspected arson. I called Namjoon, but no answer. When I uploaded the news link to our chat room, a picture showed up. Seokjin and Namjoon covered with soot. They looked like they were in the hospital. Everyone's text arrived at the same time. Are you okay? Where are you? What happened? Namjoon replied. We were at the fire, but nothing happened. We are okay. You are really okay, right? You survived, yes? To Taehyung's text, Namjoon replied. You didn't forget already, did you? We said we shouldn't die, remember? Wow. That's a throwback. What a callback, bro. What a callback. August 30th. Seokjin's entry. I came back to my everyday routine, and everything had changed. I had to change too. No, I had to go back to being me. When she saw her diary, which she was sure she had lost, she couldn't hide her surprise. Her favorite movie, places, flowers, and future dreams were all on the pages. They were the things I wanted to do for her. I couldn't tell her I was sorry. Her red diary was between us like an intersection signal. All I wanted was to make her happy and make her smile, and I wanted to be a good person. If I did what the diary said, I thought I could be that person. But it didn't happen that way. The harder I tried to become someone else, the more distant I grew from her. Even when things became so bad to the point of being irreparable, I worried about revealing my true self and her leaving me disappointed. I desperately tried to hide and turn away from myself. As you cannot put a period at the end of a sentence without a subject, after losing myself, I circled around the same place, unable to take a step forward. I know now. The me who fails and blunders is still a part of me. Only when I was honest with myself, no matter how cruel or painful it might be, would I be able to take the next step. I stood up. She didn't stop me. I walked out on the street and took her cap off. When I combed my hair with my fingers, all those hours when I had tried so hard to be someone else slipped away through my fingers. I turned and saw myself reflected in the glass window. The pallid face, pale lips, and skinny shoulders. Come on. I looked raggedy, but that was me. I smiled, and the reflection in the window smiled with me. Alright, Uni's got an entry on August 30th. I think this is the next day. Nope, same day. The first fireworks shot up and soared into the night sky. The people crowded by the stream all went ooh and ah. It was the annual fireworks festival held by Yeonji Stream at the end of the year. We all lay down at the edge of the grassy plaza, staring up at the sky. The second and third fireworks flew up into the sky. No one said a word. We watched the fireworks lighting up the sky and falling limply down back to the stream. We still had so many problems ahead of us. We all respected Seokjin's courage, but that did not solve all the problems. It might have made things more complicated for him, and it was the same for Taehyung, Jimin, and Hoseok. We still struggle with the problems from last year, and we might come together here next year with the same problems without any means to solve them. The fireworks lit up the sky again. Sounding like they would split the sky in half, they exploded in the night sky and dissipated. Some exploded in blue and green like a veil, and some lit up like cherry blossoms. The lights, which were small and not much to look at, soared and lit up the sky as they disappeared in their own flames. They were all different in different colors, and they were all beautiful. Fireworks are beautiful because they're so ephemeral. They're precious because they're evanescent. And because they're evanescent, we have to remember them. We knew everything would one day disappear, but we were all gathered under the fireworks. And when we were together, a moment is transformed into an eternity. I decided to believe that something is left behind even after all the fireworks are gone. And for now, just believing that was enough. I turned and looked at my friends. When Hosuk saw me, he grinned. Jimin looked up, took a sip from his drink, and handed it to us. Namjoon took it and finished it. Got any beer? Hearing Seokjin, I gave him a beer. Hey Kim Taeyeon. Taeyoung intercepted the beer, and when it went down the wrong pipe, it came spewing back out of his mouth. It made everyone stand up. And my eyes landed on Jungkook. He was looking down at his phone. I had received a call from Hosuk. When he said he was worried about Jungkook, I told him I'd look into him. I hadn't noticed it until then, because of all the stuff going on with Seokjin, that Jungkook had not dropped by my workroom or called me ever since he got out of the hospital. Jungkook's entry, same night, August 30th. Jungkook, Yoongi called me, so I looked up. His face was saying, "What are you doing instead of enjoying the fireworks?" So I looked up at the night sky. After sound of explosion, the fireworks lit up and soon they were gone. This is fun. They're there 1 minute and gone the next. When I looked back at the phone, my character had been shot down. I spat out a curse. Jungkook, come and see me in the workroom after school. Let's talk, said Yoongi. If I get time, I spat out in response and started a new game. Boom! Fireworks again in the sky. I pulled down my hood to cover my face. Why had it come? This was stupid. If they could have told me the truth, they would have a long time ago. I felt as if they had all left and I was the only one left behind. I got up. Even if they were to tell me now, nothing would change. If you make a fault, there will be consequences. If you lie, you should be ready to pay the price. Someone called me back, but I didn't turn around. I pressed the phone screen really fast. The guns went off, killing 2 or 3 enemies. I took 2 more steps. I saw more enemies. They had black bandanas and masks, but I knew. An evil intention cannot be camouflaged. A lie spoken with a pretty face still cannot be forgiven. I fired my gun. There were 6 dead bodies rolling by my feet. Dude, Jungkook, come back from the darkness, my dude. Seokjin's entry, 27th of September, year 22. This is nearly a month later. Starting with my dad, the people involved in the redevelopment plan and the illegal dealings were locked up behind bars one by one. My dad refused any visitation. The court-appointed lawyer looked helpless as he told us that my dad admitted to all charges. My dad had not chosen his own lawyer. The police were still after Uncle Jun-ho, who had fled after starting the fire at the container, but they had no clues as to his whereabouts. As he was still a fugitive, I still had to deal with with my emotions. The investigation continued, and I had numerous interview requests from major newspapers. I even had calls from broadcasting company producers. I refused everything. Wherever I went now, school or downtown, I felt people's glances, which I knew would happen. I wanted to return everything to its place, but now I felt as if I had arrived somewhere far away. Was this what I wanted? If I were to go back, would I make the same choice? If I didn't jump in to save Namjoon or ask Taehyung for help, or act so coldly towards Hosuk, then this would not have happened? I shook my head almost out of habit, not in denial. It meant I had no way of knowing now. If I had made a different decision, the future would have been changed. Perhaps there could have been a better future waiting for me, but I had no way of knowing now. I did my best, and I wanted to believe that the future now was the best one possible. At today's court first hearing, my dad admitted to all charges and gave up his right to defend himself. As he was walking out of the courtroom, he turned and looked at me. He looked peaceful and calm, a look that I had never seen before, and for a fleeting moment there was a sense of lightheartedness in his expression. I watched him disappear. I was seeing that expression for the first time, but I knew that was my dad's true face. When I came home, I ran into the inner room. I walked in through the half-open door. Dad's notebook from his high school days was on the desk, and on the last page he had written, "I found the map of my soul. Everything ends here and now." That is the end of that chapter. We're going to read the epilogue and keep going, just because it's like 2 pages long, right? And then we will discuss, okay? The epilogue, the world turned upside down. This is Jungkook's entry. This is like the little preview after the credits have rolled, right? That's what an epilogue is. Jungkook writes, on XX, XX, year XX, So an unknown date, Jungkook puts in this entry. I opened my eyes. It was dark everywhere, as if I was floating in an empty space with everything gone. My fingertips felt strange, so I looked at them. Something sticky and slippery dripped down my fingertips. I peered into where it had fallen. Nothing, just darkness. Where am I? What's going on? I asked myself, but instead of an answer, laughter escaped my lips. The chuckling sound hovered around me like the sticky mass of liquid. The left upper space slowly became bright. I tried turning my head, but I couldn't really move my body. I didn't feel uncomfortable. It didn't hurt anywhere or feel tiring. I just couldn't move well, as if I was floating in sticky air. The faint lights became stronger as they came at me, and in one moment they got to my fingertips. Pain flooded over me. I felt burned or frozen, as if I had been burned by scorching ice. There were more rays of light coming down around me. It became too bright. I curled up, tightened my legs and arms. I struggled to step back. I tried to run away. The lights invaded me through my fingertips. My arms and shoulders, and my ears and cheeks. I screamed, but my screams turned into liquid mass and floated around me. I tried twisting my body as hard as I could. It'll be more painful to live than to die. Do you still want to live? I remembered it from somewhere. In the next instant, my vision turned upside down. My body flipped, and so did my surroundings. For a while, I couldn't see a thing. My eyes felt as if a grain of sand was in them, but I saw something hazy in the distance. Is it a light? No, it was much brighter, bigger, and wispy. Floating and motionless, it looked down on me. After staring down on me for a long time, it began to take on a definite shape. It was the moon. I shifted my eyes to look around. I began to see things. I was floating in space. There was a big hole below me, a huge, bottomless, gaping hole. I looked up again. I saw the moon at a faraway distance. I was floating somewhere between the moon and the hole. And suddenly, I had a thought. That is not the moon. That is a big hole in the sky. Something was about to begin. Maybe I had been waiting for that. I tried to remember starting when I had been waiting, but I couldn't remember anything. And that's the end. We see cell phones. And that concludes the notes too. What a great read. What a great read. And you know what? It's like, I think the time loop is gonna start over again, but it'll be for Jungkook. Like the time loop within the time loop. Kind of like the dad's time loop closed, and then Jin's time loop closed, and then Jungkook's time loop closed. But I also want to bring up the fact that Jungkook could actually be dead or in purgatory. To hear someone say that it'll actually be more painful to live, you know, if you go back, like that's crazy. And not in a sense of physical, but emotionally painful to live than to die, because Jin never corrected that aspect. That's nuts. What a great book. What a great set of books. A great saga. I don't know if they'll make a 3, but that definitely leaves a lot open. Makes me think, right? And I'm gonna have a lot to put in here, hopefully, visually, if I can. Most of this book was it the only parts that I got visually, besides recap parts of things that happened, were in the BU universe trailer. I mean, that's pretty much what this is centered around, because it was all in the last year. But what an epic story. We never did find out what happened to the kid that they went to school with. And if we did and I overlooked it, please let me know. But that's the only question I have, is what happened to the kid who went missing? Like, we don't know, right? And I guess the only person who did know was Jin's dad. I love that it all came to a more or less happy ending. I am sad that it came to a negative ending for Jungkook, but for him to not address it is just as bad as Jin not addressing it, right? It's like you're both agreeing to not talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're caught up. We're caught up with everything BU related. So the only thing we need to do now is to go through explanation videos, which brings on the next surprise of what's coming in the future. Is I will be checking out Celeste's videos and DK TV's videos, as long as they approve, to check explanations that they have, possibly put in some insight on it, possibly learn some things that we weren't aware of. But man, what a great story. What a great story. I hope you guys enjoyed everything. Thank you for sitting with me through this entire series saga. It has been a great ride. I've enjoyed it. I hope you did as well. And I can't wait to see what comes in the future. Maybe we'll revisit the BU in future videos. Maybe we'll see something else come out, like a Notes 3. Who knows? The possibilities are endless. So, I'll see you guys next time. Y'all stay safe. Stay healthy. I will check you guys later.